Support for WUWM podcasts comes from University School of Milwaukee, fulfilling a values-based mission of developing learners, fostering leaders, and preparing citizens for pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. More information at usm.org/mission.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Joy Powers. Today we'll hear from two teachers from Nigeria working in Milwaukee public schools and how changes to work visas could impact their lives. Then we'll learn why a Wisconsin group of Catholic sisters have transferred land to a Native American tribe.
They began to have more conversations with tribal members, descendants of people who went to those schools, and realized we are not telling the same story about this school.
Plus, we'll learn about an event at UWM's planetarium that explores astronomical themes in children's books.
To me, it sounded like such a fun thing to go to the library and look at cool, award-winning children's books that have great imagery. And then the trick was to find books that had a connection to the sky.
All of that is coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll start today with the latest episode of WUWM's new podcast, Status Pending. This series takes an in-depth look at our immigration system through the eyes of the people most affected by it. In this episode, WUWM's Catherine Kokel and Audrey Nowakowski introduce us to a pair of teachers from Nigeria. Chigozie Okonkwo and his wife Chioma Mba moved here to Milwaukee 3 years ago to work as teachers. Milwaukee Public Schools sponsored their 3-year H-1B visas. Since they've been here, they've had a daughter named Sochi. These visas mean their lives and their ability to stay in the U.S. are tied to their employer. And right now, the world of work visas is really uncertain. Here are Catherine and Audrey.
Before we get into Chigozie and Chioma's story, we have to talk about the visas that they used to come here.
The H-1B is a temporary work visa. Congress allows 85,000 of them to be issued through a lottery each year. Certain jobs, like researchers and teachers, aren't capped, meaning they don't enter the lottery at all. While these types of visas are processed much faster, you're still not in control. It's all up to your employer.
These visas create a crucial but temporary pipeline of workers coming into the U.S. They fill what employers say are desperately needed jobs. Need proof? Look no further than your child's classroom.
Milwaukee Public Schools, also known as MPS, is one of many school districts that have struggled to find enough teachers. To help fill that gap, some districts turn to international teachers. MPS has more than 240 of them, and even that isn't enough. MPS started this past school year with nearly 100 teacher vacancies. Chioma sees how much they help firsthand.
Those on H-1B visa have really helped a lot in terms of MPS trying to handle shortage of teachers.
And it's bigger than just filling empty jobs. Chigozie says that international teachers are able to engage with students differently.
Then the students who have come in contact with us have found a different perspective of life, have known different way of doing things, have also been able to have educators who are caring, who are genuinely interested in their progress, who reach out to them, who treat them like siblings, like children.
To learn more about this couple's journey to come teach in Milwaukee, we visited Chigozie and Chioma at their home on the city's northwest side. It was a school night, and they were excited to meet us, but a little tired from the long day of corralling high schoolers. Chioma teaches math at one Milwaukee high school, and Chigozie teaches special education at another.
Chigozie and Chioma are a prime example of opposites attract. Chioma's default is a wide-toothed smile and a hearty laugh. Chigozie is far more reserved. It's easy to see how his presence calms the students that he works with.
How I describe myself is more like a teacher who helps students. When I have conversation with the kids, there's this stigma about special education or students with disabilities. So I describe myself as one who helps students, irrespective of disability level or ability level.
As we got comfortable in their living room, they shared their story about how they came to Milwaukee. It starts in 2022. Chigozie was a lecturer at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. He was finishing his PhD in political science, and Chioma was taking classes. The pair was about to get married. Chioma first learned about Milwaukee's teaching program from a friend, who was also a teacher. She was immediately interested, though she admits she actually knew nothing about the city. What did you know about Milwaukee? Anything?
Nothing, actually. I mean, I've heard about other places through the scholarship pathway. So I had a friend who was in Texas at that time, and I reached out to him. I'm like, what do you know about Milwaukee? And I'm like, oh, it's just like every other city, you know. Nothing special and all of that. So I started to look into it.
Despite that less than stellar sales pitch, she excitedly filled out an application. She was graduating with her bachelor's degree in education, and she loved the idea of seeing the world.
So it was just out of school and then, out. So I didn't really have that much space to live on my own or see life in a different way. So it was easy to move.
Chigozie wasn't quite so eager.
I was working in a college in the University of Nigeria, and I felt I had a comfortable life, I had a future, and then I was reluctant leaving Nigeria.
Outside of work, he enjoyed farming and spending time with his extended family. Was moving to the U.S. worth giving up everything he'd worked for in Nigeria?
Ultimately, Chigozie's decision came down to his future wife. He felt he needed to trust Chioma and support her desire for adventure.
She was interested in moving. Then I had to go with her.
Did you ever say to him, I'm going with her without you, or did you know he was going to come with you?
I knew he was going to come with me. And I also knew along the line that he was a little bit shaky. But I knew he was going to come with me.
At first, Chigozie applied for a spousal H-4 visa. It would have allowed him to accompany his wife to the U.S. and then apply for work authorization. But as Chioma began the H-1B process, Chigozie realized he could apply for the same visa. He could continue his passion for teaching in a new country.
So, now that they were both on the same page, the couple worked directly with the school district and its attorneys on the application process. H-1B is different because the employer is the one vouching for their workers. So there were no high-stakes, high-pressure interviews with immigration officials. The entire process took just under a year.
There was no kind of agency in between. So it was just MPS, the attorney, and us. So it was pretty easy and clear. You submit your credentials, you go through the interview. If you're successful in the interview or not, you get a reply. And you hear from the attorney, and she walk you through the steps on how to start procedure for the immigration status.
So how much did it cost Chigozie and Chioma to come here?
The petition was free. MPS handled everything. And when we came here, MPS gave us some kind of relocation allowance.
The legal and paperwork side of hiring foreign teachers can cost $2,500 to $10,000. But if employers really need people, like MPS does, they'll pay.
Had Milwaukee Public Schools not taken care of all of their costs like travel, visa fees, and relocation expenses, Chigozie and Chioma wouldn't have been able to come to Milwaukee.
Chioma was eager to start working. She moved to the United States first by herself in January of 2023. When you packed to move here, what did you bring?
To move to this house?
To move to the U.S.? Did you come with suitcases and clothes and that was it? Did you bring teaching materials?
I brought my clothes and food.
That was it.
It was clothes and some good African food.
Chigozie stayed in Nigeria for 5 more months to finish his PhD. When she first got here, Chioma stayed in a hotel with other international teachers. They were inundated with training on how to teach in MPS.
It was fun, actually. There was a lot of things that we had access to in the hotel. Mm-hmm. And we had other people who came along with us, so it was a good time to network with people you were going to kind of work with. Maybe in different schools, but your fellow home countrymen. Mm-hmm. So it was good network time.
Were there
So-
also other teachers from Nigeria there?
Yes,
Okay.
at that time.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other countries?
Yes, I do. We do have some from the Philippines, from Ghana, from Kenya, from Colombia.
Something that blew my mind is that Chioma stepped foot in the U.S. for the first time just 2 weeks before the start of the spring semester. Chigozie moved to Milwaukee later that semester and started teaching in the fall. Pretty quickly, both of them realized that students in the U.S. behave very differently from students in Nigeria.
The student back in Nigeria are more interested in learning activities in and out of school, right? But here, I feel like there's a lot going on with the kids, there's a lot of distractions. They are willing to learn, some of them, but there's just a lot of things going on.
Chioma is right. Students in Milwaukee face a lot of challenges. Both Chigozie and Chioma were placed in high-poverty, low-performing schools.
Chigozie was navigating an even bigger personal difference. He went from being a college lecturer to teaching high schoolers.
The students in Nigeria were more motivated, and then the teacher in Nigeria would do more of the talking, instruction, and then conceptual understanding more than what you do here. And I had to figure in my head how I fit into that space. Although knowing also working in college, that was a bit more of the approach in college. So I thought the students could be engaged in conversation and then they participate, but it was different here. The students here are more passive, while back home they are more active. So that was what I needed to figure out how to go about it.
Both say they've learned a lot from their students. And Chioma discovered that sometimes classroom management means leaning into some humor.
But when I want to catch their attention, I switch to the Nigerian mode. I'm like,
Wait, can you give me an example? I need to hear this. Okay, I'm in your class and I'm screwing around and I'm not listening to you.
you better sit down there now.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to call your mommy now if you don't sit down. And they're like, Miss Oprah, why are you talking like this? I try to speak like them.
Mm-hmm.
I try to do the whole hand gesture and why are you acting like? I'm like, girl, hey queen, all those things. So I try to be like them and I try to be myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes they mimic me, sometimes it's all part of learning process,
Chigozie and Chioma's daughter Sochi was born in April 2024. She's a dual Nigerian and American citizen.
Let me tell you about Sochi. She is shy around strangers, but she has the same big smile as her mother. When we were at their house, Sochi was so interested in our microphones that we gave her an extra one to hold throughout the interview. Hi.
Do your own radio show.
Can you hear me? Can you? Kids love holding the microphone. Say your name.
Hi.
She looked at us like we were crazy, but Sochi was a natural with the mic. She held it toward her mother when she spoke, just like I did. When her attention waned, Sochi put the microphone in my lap softly and went about teetering around the living room.
Chigozie and Chioma haven't seen their extended family for 3 years. They've been busy with their jobs and with Sochi, of course, but the rapid changes in immigration enforcement make them nervous to travel back home, or even try to bring their families from Nigeria to Milwaukee.
That makes it all the more important that they connect with their past lives and introduce Sochi to her Nigerian heritage. At their house, Chioma led us downstairs to the basement that she has turned into a sewing space.
Oh my goodness.
And
I'm trying not to step on anything.
I'm working at this right now.
Wow.
Bright, patterned Ankara fabric is spread all over the basement's clean floor, along with mismatching scraps and boxes of pins. Chioma orders the fabric from Nigeria to create ashoke headpieces. She's even handmade colorful dresses for some friends in Milwaukee.
In Nigeria, Chigozie was an active member of his church. When he came to Milwaukee, finding a Presbyterian congregation here was a non-negotiable.
And then we met a very, will I say, amazing pastor. He was so welcoming, he was caring, It
Yeah,
wasn't
that was another
awkward. It
thing.
was like a home.
Chigozie and Chioma aren't the only African transplants in their church. West Granville Presbyterian helps to settle new people coming to work in the U.S., and so far, they've welcomed 5 families. There, Chigozie and Chioma have a community that understands some of what they went through to leave their lives in Nigeria and establish new ones here.
And it doesn't hurt to have some reminders of home. Chigozie and Chioma love to bring traditional African dishes like jollof rice to gatherings in the church's basement. They share it with people who have never had it before, but also with the people who are being reminded of home with every bite. We asked Chigozie and Chioma what they wished people knew about the immigration process.
They should understand people who come to this country have made a lot of sacrifice. People have left their former life and then they are here.
So sometimes as reporters, something happens that turns a story on its head while you're working on it. For us, that was a change to the H-1B visa program that brought Chigozie and Chioma to Milwaukee. In September, the Trump administration totally overhauled it. They attached a fee of $100,000 to all new visa applications.
Trump said that the H-1B program has been, quote, deliberately exploited to replace rather than supplement American workers with lower-paid, lower-skilled labor. But the reality is that H-1Bs are for skilled workers in jobs like tech, medicine, and education. As a result of this change, fewer people like Chigozie and Chioma will make the journey to work in the U.S.
Milwaukee Public Schools has paused its hiring of new international teachers. Since Chigozie and Chioma are already here, they should be able to renew their visas, if both they and their employer want that. Chigozie says they have to depend on MPS for updates.
Everything is in a state of flux. You never know what to expect at every moment. But overall, the school, the MPS board have been quite supportive, trying to share information and reassure us.
If Chigozie and Chioma want to stay longer, they might be able to renew their visas once to add another 3 years. The new $100,000 fee doesn't apply to renewals. They could also apply for green cards, which grant permanent residency.
But moving from an H-1B to a green card isn't a seamless process. It can take more than 2 years.
And as they enter the final year of their 3-year visas, they don't agree about whether to stay here long term. Chigozie really misses his family and the life he had in Nigeria, and the changes to the visa system and increased scrutiny of immigrants weighs on him.
So for us, being on H-1B, it poses some challenges, uncertainty. What happens next? How long do you have? How do you plan your life? Or what do you look forward to? Then we are not sure if you travel. How do you come back? What happens next?
But Chioma says that she'd stay here forever if MPS would have her. Her family is here with her husband and daughter. And her job is fulfilling, helping students fall in love with math just like she did. Here's Chioma and Sochi, who decided to speak up.
And we also learn a lot. I do learn a lot from those kids. They are smart. Even if they don't think they are. But they are really, really, really super intelligent. But they don't just believe in themselves. But I love my kids.
While they have a lot they're grateful for, Chigozie and Chioma are facing the reality that their future is not fully in their hands. Nevertheless, they continue to put down roots.
And wait to see what the next seasons will bring.
That was Catherine Kokel and Audrey Nowakowski with the 4th episode of WUWM's podcast, Status Pending. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. New episodes in the limited series drop each Wednesday. And did you know you can listen to Lake Effect as a podcast? Search for Lake Effect wherever you get your podcasts to download and listen on demand. Later in the show, we'll tell you about an event that brings together children's books and astronomy. But coming up next, we'll learn about the first land transfer between a Catholic organization and a Native American tribe. That's coming up on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. The first land transfer between a Catholic organization and a Native American tribe took place in Wisconsin in October. The La Crosse-based Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration transferred land that housed their Marywood Spirituality Center to the Lac du Flambeau tribe. The transfer grew from conversations about the sisters' role in Native American boarding schools. Those schools were used to forcibly assimilate Indigenous children in the 19th and 20th centuries. A group called Land Justice Futures helped facilitate the transfers of the property from the sisters to the tribe. Brittany Cotelis is the co-founder and director of Land Justice Futures. She joins WUWM's Maria Peralta Ariano to learn about what led to the transfer.
Can you give me your definition of land justice and why it matters in our modern day, especially in urban cities and then in places like the Lac du Flambeau Reservation?
Yeah. So at Land Justice Futures, we define land justice as centering racial repair, ecological healing, and community power in decisions about how land is loved, used, and governed. So land justice is about, it's about protecting the land from extraction, but it's also about the ongoing regenerative relationships with land. And it's about restoring equity and community power in the places where colonization and systems of oppression have kept people off of land.
Most of this interview, we're going to be talking about land justice in relationship to Indigenous communities. That is not the only communities that you guys are looking to help in that way. So can you kind of outline in other ways that land justice is being incorporated in other communities?
So land justice can really be a lot of things. At its core, land justice is about changing the way that we think about and relate to land and learning how to see how this system of real estate and private property is actually built upon a history of taking things and enclosing them for the most elite, right? Resources, land, the decisions that we make about land have been reserved for an elite few. And land justice is about amending the harm that's been done to people and land as a system of extraction and commodification has grown. So land justice can look like a lot of things. It can look like restoring stewardship to Indigenous communities. It can look like Black-led regenerative farming collectives, community-owned housing, putting power into migrant workers' hands by supporting communal land ownership structures. Land justice is about putting community control and care at the center of how we think about land. And so because of the story of this country that often has to do with repairing harms for systemic racism, for colonization, for enslavement, and Jim Crow, we see how it often intersects with that, with systemic racism.
Some people may look at this piece of news and think that this really isn't necessary. There is often pushback when it comes to healing the relationship between African American communities, Indigenous communities, or even migrant workers, as you mentioned. So what do you want people to understand about this when they're reading these stories and taking in this information?
I think what people don't really understand the extent to which, one, that the role the Catholic Church played in the colonization of the Americas. And it's not just the role that the church played in the 14 and 1500s, which was a huge one. There are 3 decrees by the Pope, they're called papal bulls, that make up this thing called the Doctrine of Discovery. And in those decrees, the Pope said, go conquer, vanquish, and subdue all non-Christians. And it decreed that it declared that any land unoccupied by Christians was empty. It's terra nullius was the Latin term, empty land, and open to be discovered. Those were things that were written in the 14th and 15th century, but I think what people don't understand is those are the documents that are cited into the first U.S. Supreme Court cases about private property. They directly cite the Catholic Pope. And that doctrine, those papal decrees, have been cited as recently as 2005 in a Supreme Court case about private property. So we have, in 2005, we are citing a 14th or 15th century papal decree to legitimize that when the colonists got here, the land magically became vested. And that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg who wrote that. That wasn't, this isn't a partisan thing. This isn't conservative or liberal. We are Catholic or not. We are all swimming in the waters of a private property system that was made up by a small elite, reinforced by church and state, to say whoever has the money gets to decide what happens to the land and every living being on it.
Thank you for clarifying about who noted that. I think that's also an important point. And just a nod to how we're all in part of the system, no matter, like you said, our political affiliation.
Yeah.
So to talk about the land transfer itself, you kind of mentioned a little bit of the beginning, how we got here. So can you just kind of detail the journey, how this conversation started, and just the road to finalizing the purchase?
So this story begins, I think, in 2019 or 2020. The Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration started down a long road of understanding and reckoning more deeply with a boarding school that they administered in Odena, Wisconsin, on the Bad River Ojibwe Reservation. Up until that point, that was a school that the sisters were proud to have administered. And in so many ways, they, the stories they told were how they took care of Ojibwe kids. They began to have more conversations with tribal members, descendants of people who went to those schools, and realized we are not telling the same story about this school. This school was often a traumatic place for Indigenous families. And whether or not the sisters, had good intentions, whatever their intentions were, what's true is that boarding schools were part of a federal agenda that was trying to separate Indigenous people from their culture, from their language, from their kinship structures, so that they could be separated from their land. And boarding schools were a part of that, and they were forced on Indigenous families. Kids were taken away forcefully from their families. Rations were withheld from the federal government if families didn't acquiesce to the demand to send kids to schools where they couldn't speak their own language, where they couldn't practice their own religion. Some of the partners we work with say that boarding schools were as traumatic as the violence and war. It's a different kind of violence, and its impacts are still alive in families today. So the sisters were kind of coming alive to that story, and they were going deeper into that reckoning process, knowing that they wanted to be a part of a legacy of healing. And I really commend them for that. They had some leaders there that really were saying, we know this is hard. We know this is hard for some of our members to understand at this late stage in life, and, having a long story that was a very different one that they had inherited about these schools. And they chose to go down that road and tell the truth and uncover the truth as told by Indigenous people. It was also at that time that the order, because they were becoming smaller, they were making decisions about some of the land and buildings that they own as a community. And Land Justice Futures came into the picture at that point. So they joined us as we have a community called a Focus Community Program. We bring communities of sisters into learning cohorts to look at what are the ways that the decisions that we make about our land can be socially, racially, ecologically healing, can build community power. And we do the work of helping them discover what that looks like in place for their community. And communities like FSPA are in community with a national network of other communities of Catholic sisters who are doing the same thing. So they joined us on that journey in 2022. They went through a 2-year accompaniment process where they really, we got into talking about this history of the land in the United States, of the specific land at Marywood, and potential ways of collaborating toward and looking at the transition of the land into the future that we're also healing. So we kind of came along as a technical partner, a relationship building partner, an educational partner. That's kind of the role that Land Justice Futures played.
Do you think that this is a model that can be replicated throughout the U.S.? And how do we get there?
100%. I mean, that's why Land Justice Futures is here. We are saying we think and hope and know the first 2 acres of many. The Catholic Church is the largest private landowner in the world. Communities of sisters who are at the forefront of that church in so many ways are in a moment of discerning the future of the lands that they love. Yeah, and so that's what we really do is we are already hearing back from other communities in our network saying, this is awesome, we're studying this, who's next?
Brittany Kotelis is the co-founder and director of Land Justice Futures. She spoke with WUWM's Eric Vaughn Fellow, Maria Peralta Ariano. In about 10 minutes, we'll learn about the Green Tree Apartments and the people who've been impacted by the Learning Center there. But first, we'll learn about an event at the planetarium that explores astronomical themes in children's books. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers. This month, UW-Milwaukee's Manfred Olson Planetarium won't just be a place for stargazing, but also for reading. In partnership with UWM's Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies, the planetarium is putting on a family-friendly event featuring 2 award-winning children's books with astronomical themes. To learn about the event and the partnership that made it possible, Lake Effect's Audrey Nowakowski is joined by Planetarium Director Jean Creighton and Monica Van Bladel, the Associate Director of the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies.
So this month, the planetarium has an event geared towards kids and their families, and it's also in partnership with the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. Monica, you are part of the center, so we'll start with you. Can you share a bit more about what you do on campus and how this partnership with the planetarium came about?
Yeah, thanks so much. So at UWM, I am Associate Director of our Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. And our mission at the center is really to promote a deeper understanding of these world regions of Latin America and the Caribbean. So we have a really big public engagement component of that work. And I've been in the role for about a year and have been really pleased to work with Jean and Victoria and the planetarium staff to plan this great storytime event with books we have on campus.
Yeah, and at this event, you're reading a couple of children's books about people who live in the Caribbean region. And Jean, I'd love to know more about what these books are and what you were looking for in a book to partner with for this program.
So I imagine that Monica will explain a little bit about these award-winning books. But to me, it sounded like such a fun thing to go to the library and look at cool, award-winning children's books that have great imagery. And then the trick was to find books that had a connection to the sky. Often children's books, as I found out, either don't have any depiction of the sun or the moon, or it's incorrect. So
So true.
So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could score on all fronts? And I confess that at the beginning I had bitten more than I could chew. So I said, oh, yeah, look at 500 books, no problem. But I quickly understood that that wasn't going to take place. But we found 2 books very quickly that we both thought, oh, these are gorgeous and wonderful.
Amazing. So one book is called If Dominican Were a Color. Which one of you would like to share a little bit about that one?
Well, I'll start with that one because that was the one that caught my eye. It has a beautiful way of incorporating the sun specifically, but also the moon, in just daily activities. So I love the fact that it's talking about the color of the sky being what the color of the sun is during the sunrise. And it has beautiful reds and pinks and vibrant colors all through the book. And I feel like it's doing a justice to this, the beauty of the sky.
Yeah, and I'll add to that this partnership with the planetarium is so exciting because we get to emphasize that there are so many cultures in this world and that we all share the same sky. And this book gives us an opportunity to share a little bit about the culture of an island nation and what the world and everyday life and the sky look like from that perspective.
And especially leaning into some fun imagination and a fun take on the night sky. The second book that is part of this program is called Little Night. Can you share more about that?
Yes, I'd love to start with that one. It's really a beautiful transition moment, too, from the vibrant colors of the first into the softer palette of blues and purples. And it's this really playful story of a mother and a child who personify the day sky and the night sky, and they're playing hide and seek as the little child is getting ready for bed. So it's this really sweet integration of a landscape and the night sky and their everyday routines, and giving us a look at these familiar, wondrous stars and planets and elements of the sky as part of a really sweet and playful nighttime story.
I love that. And are you going to project the book images onto the dome in the planetarium, or is it more classic read book style, show the audience the pictures?
We're happy that one of the publishers has given us permission to do that. It is a free show after all. We want everyone to join. So for the vibrant color ones, we've gotten permission. We're keeping our fingers crossed that maybe the other publisher comes through before the event, before it's too late.
I hope so too. So for these books, Jean, you gave a little teaser, but Monica, if you want to have more details about it, both of these books have been recognized by the Americas Award for Children's Literature, which means they are high-quality literature that represent Latin American and Caribbean cultures. Can you explain the significance, Monica? And if anyone's interested to learn more, where can they access this at UWM?
Yeah, the Americas Award collection has a close place in UWM history. It was founded in 1993 by a few people, including UWM's own Julie Klein, who wanted to recognize all of the great children's and young adults literature coming out about the region. So our UWM library, thankfully, has a reference collection of every title that has won the award and then additional titles that have been commended, honor titles, since 1993 through the present. And it's a fantastic resource for anyone from the public to walk into the library and consult, and great for parents, educators, local librarians, and anyone who's interested.
Amazing. And after the read-along for these two great books, there's also going to be stargazing and a craft. Now, Jean, I know you have a lot of school groups that come through the planetarium, but for the ages of 4 years old to 10, what are you looking forward to showing them? And, I imagine you have to keep it concise enough to hold their attention, but also wow them, right?
Yeah, well, actually, the real goal is not to frighten them. So we're probably going to practice going from daytime to nighttime. And maybe we do a trick. I've done this before where we say, okay, we're going to take now all the light out of the sky and shove it in your pocket. And then they put it all in the pocket and the room gets darker and darker and darker. And then we see what the stars look like. For many kids, they've never seen stars like that at all. So that's exciting. And then maybe with a little luck, they get to see the Milky Way, which I sure hope they will. The thing here is to keep it relatively short so that they don't have time to worry about what does this dark room really mean, right? But I think that showing them, something like the Seven Sisters, showing them a planet like Saturn, most of them will know that it has rings. And that's enough to get, a a good flavor for it.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like an amazing event to have both reading some books and some stargazing and a craft, all for families and, as you mentioned, for free. So, Jean and Monica, thank you both so much for joining me today to talk about story time in the Caribbean.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Jean Creighton is the director of the Manfred Olson Planetarium at UW-Milwaukee. Monica Van Bladel is the associate director of the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. They both joined Lake Effect's Audrey Nowakowski ahead of their event Storytime in the Caribbean. That'll be on December 6th at 2 p.m. To find more information and register for this free event, head to wuwm.com. Last year, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel published a series on the Green Tree Teutonia Apartments, a public housing complex and learning center on Milwaukee's far north side. The series covered the people living and working there, the institution's success stories, and how it defies stereotypes of public housing. Reporter and photographer Angela Peterson spent 15 months at the site, gathering interviews, taking photos, and getting to know the residents. She gave Lake Effect Sam Woods a tour of the site, where a feeling of safety was palpable.
What does it feel like to feel safe? Of course, there's being physically safe, where your body is not in danger of physical harm. But at Green Tree Teutonia Apartments, safety comes in many forms. And for Raphael Ford, feeling safe sounds something like this.
In the neighborhood, it's out there in the neighborhood.
Artist name Mayhem, or Mayhem 3, Ford is a musician, rapper, and a member of the Milwaukee Hittas, a competitive drumline group that you may have seen performing at Brewers games. He spent much of his teenage years at the Green Tree Teutonia Community Learning Center, catching up on schoolwork and honing his musical talents.
I learned how to do everything in there, pretty much like basic math. And I learned how to read in there because they had me read for extra time. I learned how to make music. But basically, I just learned. I grew up in there.
The Learning Center and the residents of Green Tree Teutonia Apartments are the subject of a series from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Together, the two public housing complexes house around 700 residents in 328 units. Rent is calculated based on income, with the difference subsidized by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, and units are managed by the Housing Ministries of Wisconsin. Many residents stay for decades and often find work at the complex or by using employment services there. The series was led by photographer and journalist Angela Peterson, who collected stories at Green Tree for 15 months. Perhaps by coincidence, or perhaps by fate, her journey to photography was nurtured in the 1970s at a community center similar to Green Tree near her childhood home in Washington, D.C. And as fate would have it, her photography journey began with young love.
When I was in junior high school, I had a crush on this guy. I'll just say Dennis C. I won't say his last name.
Protect the innocent, yeah.
And he was in the photography club. And it was actually this crush that led me to photography. And I don't always start with that story, but my girlfriends, they were like, well, join the club because Dennis is in it. I'm like, okay. So I joined the club.
Her crush didn't last, but a lifelong love for photography was born in this class. Soon, Peterson enrolled in a vocational high school focusing on photojournalism and connected with mentors at the Washington Post to kickstart her career. But even today, she remembers one of her instructors at the community center in Washington, D.C., who gave her a safe space to be herself and explore her art.
The person who led the class, and I don't know his full name, we just called him Bubba. Black man, kind of round, and it kind of, almost Santa Claus-ish, like, almost if you will. When he laughed, his stomach kind of jiggled and everything. But he had such a warm personality, and he was so encouraging to me when I became interested in photography.
Walking into Green Tree decades later, Peterson remembered getting a similar feeling to the center that nurtured her passions as a teenager. A feeling that people cared, and that she would be encouraged to be herself.
I know that Milwaukee, in some communities, is not very safe. But when I went through the door, I felt safe. And I think the kids there feel safe as well. They feel safe to be themselves. They feel safe to run around. They feel safe to be in a space where they can learn. They feel safe where they could be encouraged. And that's what I took away just within like 2 days of just being there. I mean, just that quick. And I was like, she's like this magnet to not only the kids, but the adults too as well.
The magnet Angela referred to is Vicki Davidson, Program Director at the Greentree Teutonia Learning Center. She's worked at Greentree for 26 years and even lived there for 12. Miss Vicki is a never-ending source of love and support. See, many folks come to Greentree at an especially low point in their lives, when stability and safety are top priorities for adults and children alike. The Learning Center offers computers, printers, and services for filling out job applications, writing and printing resumes, and otherwise supporting Greentree residents and the surrounding community in their effort to find a stable income. For children, the Learning Center offers summer enrichment programs, scholastic support, African dance classes, games, events, field trips, and more. The result is a center where children feel safe to ask for help and to create lifelong memories.
When children remember something with joy, they remember a field trip, they remember something Mr. Martinez said or did that they can still laugh about, or they remember something I said or did that they can laugh about. That's where the joy comes in. Knowing that you created memories and that the memories mean so much that they still come back to let you know, life is good or that something may not be good. We've had some tragedies over the years, but those are the moments that we live for, I think.
But Miss Vicki will be the first to tell you that often love is rooted in accountability, in seeing the potential in someone and holding them accountable to reaching that potential. To instill this in the young people at the Learning Center, the Greentree staff developed a responsibility paragraph, and children of all ages are expected to recite it every morning during the summer program.
It is time for me to start blaming others for the way I act and start taking responsibility for my own actions.
I am who I am because of the choices I make.
Responsibility is the key to my success. If it is to be, it is up to me.
Miss Vicki remembers being surprised when her son, now in his 30s, still has the responsibility paragraph memorized.
Years ago, he was in a program, a Saturday program, and he's in his 30s and he still knows it by heart. He says, "Ma," he says, "I can't believe," he said, "but I do know." I said, "You still remember that?" He says, "Yeah, when you learn something as a child," he said, "it just sticks with you." And I said, well, then the key to that, of course, is if you can impart and pour into children early and keep pouring into them, it's more likely to stick with them.
Moments like this are what Miss Vicki and the staff at Greentree lay the groundwork for. Miss Vicki will be the first to tell you that progress can be slow, and some folks slip through the cracks, unable to meet the expectations set by the Learning Center or apartment complexes. But overall, public housing communities like the Greentree and Teutonia Apartments and the Greentree Learning Center have found a way to get countless Milwaukeeans back on their feet, one job application at a time, one reading lesson at a time, and one calming exhale at a time. And after 26 years of service, Miss Vicki has seen dividends paid on that stability and safety in the forms of stable, successful, and safe alumni.
We've done a lot, and a lot of people have come through our doors. But you know what the most rewarding thing is? Is to have people come back. To have parents come back and tell you, "My little kids, remember them? Oh, they're all grown up now. Or they're in high school now. Or they're in grade school now. And they're doing good. I'm doing good. I just bought a home. I just moved into a 3-bedroom townhouse." And you know what their struggle was when they were here. And then you see from whence they've come and where they are now. That's the most rewarding for me.
And as Angela Peterson can attest, tomorrow's success stories, tomorrow's Angelas, tomorrow's Vickies, and tomorrow's Raphaels are finding safety and stability at Greentree as we speak.
There was one student, first name was Angel, and she walked in the first day, and she was very quiet, and she had a book. And she used this book as a shield to not associate with the other children, in my opinion. She's very, very shy. By week 3, the book had come down. She was doing cartwheels outside with the kids during recess, And it creates like this opportunity for kids to forge friendships with each other. Now, don't get me wrong, there's drama that happens too. Some kids don't like each other. That happens everywhere. But I noticed how she started to come out of her shell. And it was wonderful. And the adults, I could hear them talking about that. Look, she didn't bring the book today. Where's the book? She's interacting. She's talking. She's putting her arms around someone. She's broken down that shield. She's put it aside so that others could come into her space too as well. And I think that's what happens at Green Tree. They create an environment where it's supportive for everyone to be in the same space. They create a space where they want everyone to succeed.
That piece was produced by Sam Woods and includes sound from Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reporter Angela Peterson, Green Tree Teutonia Community Learning Center Program Director Vicki Davidson, artist Raphael Ford, and Green Tree Youth. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Joy Powers. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at wuwm.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll learn how refugee resettlement efforts in Milwaukee are being affected by the Trump administration's further crackdowns on asylum seeking and immigration. Thanks so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
Moving slow enough, I smell that barbecue. I need my plate, yes, more than one. Extra time, see the fam outside, like where we going? Cause down the street, the hoop go bring the troops. I need a bunch of us. I ain't trying to get nobody trouble. We just